Tell me, Morgan, is this card here the 8 of spades?
That's an 8 of
Indeed,
spades.
it is the 8 of spades.
I describe magic as an obsession, and I mean that rather literally, because I can't stop thinking about it.
This is Daniel Roy. He's not your average Penn grad.
So my name is Daniel Roy. I graduated in May of 2020. Weird time to graduate. And I'm currently a professional sleight of hand magician trying to make it work in the virtual age, which has been an interesting challenge, but it's going okay so far, which has been fun and exciting.
If you recognize Daniel, it may be from his appearance on Penn and Teller's Fool Us, where he performed in front of the iconic Las Vegas duo, but it also might be from Biology 221, where he was a TA. Over the past couple of years, Daniel has performed at a number of venues, and he's doing virtual shows and sharing his skills online via Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. The last time I saw Daniel in person was during a biology recitation in December 2019, but I sat down with him last month over Zoom to talk about magic, his time at Penn, and what it was like to take that risk. A lot of people describe Penn as pre-professional because of the emphasis on particular careers that people go into, like finance, consulting, and tech. But pre-professionalism isn't necessarily a bad thing. But the problem is that without purpose, motivation can quickly turn into blind ambition. And blind ambition is a pretty unsustainable fuel. But the question is, how do you find purpose? For Daniel, it started when he was 10 years old and first saw an amateur magician perform in his elementary school. That moment quite literally changed his life forever. He likened it to seeing a new color for the first time, experiencing a level of amazement he never even thought was possible.
I realize I'm making it sound somewhat religious in nature. I mean, I'd never experienced that level of visceral wonder before, and I'm like, whoa, this is possible. Oh, yeah, wow.
Pretty much right after, he visited a magic shop in San Francisco, and the owner sold him a book called Card College. That's sort of like a canonical text in the world of magic. That book became his new obsession.
So I did that from ages like 10 to 14, like practicing like hours and hours and hours and hours a day. So intensely that like on the weekends, like I would wake up and start reading and practicing. And then, you know, my dad would knock on my door and be like, have you had lunch yet? I'd be like, what? No, he's like, it's 5 p.m. It's almost time for dinner. And I just would have like time just disappeared.
But he mostly gave up magic in high school. And when he got to Penn, he thought he was going to go follow in the footsteps of his parents. They were doctors, scientists, and engineers. But he also realized that that path wasn't really for him.
I was potentially pre-grad and did a lot of research in biology labs, and I loved the people in the lab. I really loved the PI. I found the work fascinating. I just realized this just isn't, I don't want to do this long term. It had nothing to do with the environment or the people. I just realized this as a career path just isn't for me. And then I was thinking about, oh, well, maybe I'll be pre-med, and I did all but one of my pre-med requirements. I got everything done except for orgo lab. Then I did some clinical shadowing, and I just realized, you know, I think I like the idea of being a doctor a lot more than I would like being a doctor. Not to say that clinical shadowing is a good representation of what it's like to be a doctor, but I couldn't see myself doing what the people I was watching doing. I found it interesting and fascinating. I could not see myself doing that on a daily basis and being happy. And so magic kind of slowly superseded all of that. And I realized I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life if I don't give this a try.
So he did. While he was at Penn, he was a member of the Penn Illusionist Club. But during the second half of his time here, he got a lot more serious about actually performing.
Once again, total serendipity. Happened to go see a magic show that was at a theater that's about 45 minutes outside Philadelphia called the Smoke and Mirrors Magic Theater. And they said, oh, hey, our opener can't make it tomorrow night. Do you want to open? Because I did a few tricks for the owners backstage after the show. They're like, yeah, do you want to open 18 hours from now? And I'm like, okay, sure. And then I ended up performing there almost 40 times during the last 2 years of college. I would go like at least once or twice a month.
He ended up getting a lot of footage for those performances, and he ended up making tapes to audition for Penn and Teller's Fool Us. For those of you who don't know, that show is like America's Got Talent for magicians. That was right before the pandemic. Since then, he's been posting pretty regularly on social media and doing online shows, getting some pretty significant traction. He has almost 30,000 subscribers on YouTube and more than 1.8 million views. His path to magic sounds pretty straightforward. Childhood inspiration, formative exposure, obsessive practice, leading to pretty good success. But Daniel will be the first to tell you, it's not that simple.
And I think it's one of these things that it's very linear in hindsight, right? I dare say 2020 hindsight. I think we have to retire that phrase. But it's very linear in hindsight.
The thing about life is that it really only makes sense in retrospect. I mean, think about where you are right now. You know exactly what got you there. But the future is uncertain, and uncertainty is terrifying. We don't know if the risks we take are going to pay off, so we opt not to take them. We go the safe route because safety isn't as scary as the unknown. By pursuing magic full-time, Daniel certainly took a risk. But just because he took a left turn away from the route of a typical college graduate doesn't mean his Penn education isn't valuable to him.
I studied biology at Penn, and I started out studying cell and molecular biology, and then I asked the department if I could just switch over to taking neurobiology classes and still make those count without having to totally redo all my prerequisites. And they're like, yeah, sure. I was totally ready to bribe them with magic tricks, didn't have to. They were just very accommodating. Magic got me more interested in neuroscience, and then neuroscience got me more interested in magic. It was kind of a bi-directional process in the sense that it was clear from reading about magic theory and from just doing a lot of magic that, I mean, this may seem interesting. This may either come off as very interesting or totally obvious, but obviously the experience of magic is not happening in my hands, it's happening in your mind. And I don't mean that in a philosophical sense, I mean that very literally your entire experience of the world is just constrained by how your brain works. And it's entirely happening in your brain.
Daniel obviously loves neuroscience and the brain. It's clear from the way he talks and the metaphors he chooses. But it also really helps during his performances.
Yeah, I think it was that and also the classes I was taking and just my general interest in neuroscience as well. That definitely helped me understand magic a lot more, but also made me realize that, oh, the audience actually finds it really interesting if I explain some of how this works.
Central to Daniel's magic is the audience, and he's performed for a lot of different types of viewers, whether they're 2 feet away from him or on some of the weirder parts of the internet.
Don't go on Omegle. Just don't. I don't know if this bit will make it in. Don't go on Omegle. Don't let your kids on Omegle. Never go on Omegle. It's a weird place.
You only have to watch his performances for a few minutes to discover that he's really, really good with a crowd. And it's not just because he's charismatic and confident, it's also because he's unique. He isn't like other magicians because he's also a trained basic scientist. The audience undoubtedly picks up on this, and the angle through which he performs his magic makes it seem fresh and interesting. And really, that's what we ought to be adding to our pre-professional endeavors. Whether you're majoring in finance or plan to apply to medical school, there's probably something that you've always really wanted to do, but never really had the courage to do it. Maybe it's magic, but maybe it's screenwriting, maybe it's design. Whatever it is, you have the resources to pursue it, especially at a place like Penn.
This is something that I've realized not to underestimate, is the extent to which people may find your just different perspective on things to be really interesting. I mean, there aren't many magicians who went to Penn and studied neurobiology. So like, that's a very unique perspective on magic. And at first I thought no one's going to find this interesting. And then the more I started to incorporate it into my performances, the more I realized, oh, people generally do find this very interesting because it's a unique take on this.
But it goes beyond perspective. At Penn, we plan a lot. We're always thinking about our careers and where they're headed and how successful they'll be. We're told to make connections and we're told to leverage those connections. We're proactive about what courses we need to take, what internships we need to get. Daniel says that those are skills that you can transfer to something more creative as well.
Recommend not leaving those, just because you're doing something that might, in a sense, not be related to your degree, doesn't mean you can't apply some of the lessons about networking and learning stuff and hard work that you may have learned from those studies.
So take a risk. You don't need to know that you were going to be a magician since you were a little kid to incorporate creativity into your career. You might find that pursuing something that you've been curious about for a really long time brings some meaning back into your work, and the blind ambition that drives you might start feeling a little bit more purposeful. Thanks for watching. I hope you like hearing about Daniel's career as much as I did. If you're interested in magic, you can always take classes with Daniel himself or check out his tutorials on YouTube and elsewhere. Links are in the description.